What if the moon isn't actually a rock at all? Like, what if it's a hollow silver warehouse for UFOs?
Right. Or what if the dinosaurs weren't wiped out by an asteroid, but by, a literal divine plague?
Yeah.
They were actually biological weapons engineered by Satan.
Exactly. Or, I mean, consider the Sahara Desert for a second. What if it isn't just a natural climate phenomenon, but the scorched earth remnants of this massive cover-up to hide ancient genetic laboratories, labs that we just happen to call the Egyptian pyramids today?
It is a wildly provocative set of questions. I mean, it completely upends the conventional timeline of history, geology, theology, and just merges them into something entirely unfamiliar.
Which is exactly why we are diving into it today. So, for you listening, welcome to this deep dive into translated excerpts from a text called The Origins of Mankind and the Celestial Creation of Earth by an author named Shuafen. We are unpacking what is essentially a breathtakingly unconventional alternative history of the universe.
Yeah, it functions almost like a grand unified theory of existence.
Right. It takes science fiction, ancient mythology, world religions, geological mysteries, and weaves them all into one massive interconnected narrative. It's like the ultimate cinematic crossover universe, but with, Jesus and UFOs.
It really is. But to set the stage for you, it's vital to understand our approach to this material today. The claims regarding religious figures, global conflicts, and the origins of different human lineages are highly specific to this author's cosmology.
Yeah, we are definitely not taking sides here.
Exactly. We are not here to validate, endorse, or debate the historical or scientific accuracy of these viewpoints. Whether it's right-wing, left-wing, or just out there, our objective is purely analytical. We are going to impartially step inside the architecture of this text to understand its internal logic.
Right, to see how the author mechanically connects these wildly disparate threads, we are looking at the blueprints of this universe. And, to understand humanity's place in this specific cosmology, we have to start with the construction of the set where the whole story takes place.
The Earth and the Moon.
Yes. In this text, Earth wasn't the result of cosmic dust, like gravitationally pulling together over billions of years. It was the ultimate calculated engineering project.
The time frame presented here is 4.5 billion years ago. And in this narrative, Jesus serves essentially as a cosmic project manager.
Which is just a wild concept on its own.
Right. Operating under the permission of an entity referred to as the greatest creator. Jesus leads a workforce of hundreds of millions of beings called celestials.
Wow.
And their objective was to mathematically design and physically build the solar system.
The logistics of that are just fascinating to picture. It's like viewing the creation of the solar system as this massive venture capital funded terraforming startup.
That's a great way to put it.
They aren't just waving a magic wand. They are actively calculating the rotary speed, the planetary mass, the exact necessary distance from the sun to allow for liquid water.
Yeah, and once the broader solar system was stabilized, nearly 100 million of these celestials were dispatched directly to Earth to execute the localized terraforming.
100.
Yeah. And this wasn't an instantaneous creation either. The text outlines a grueling 2.3 billion year terraforming process.
That is a very long startup phase.
Seriously. These celestials were tasked with synthesizing the water, establishing the atmospheric composition, and designing the vast majority of the plant life and grazing animals.
Wait, I remember reading that there's a distinct line drawn between what was engineered and what just sort of happened, right?
Yes, exactly. So microbes, for instance, were not explicitly designed by the celestials. They emerged organically simply because the celestials had introduced liquid water and photosynthesis to the environment. They were just a byproduct.
Okay, wait, I'm stuck on something here, though. If these celestials are advanced enough to mathematically design an entire solar system and, synthesize a functioning biosphere, how do they forget to include a moon?
It does seem like a pretty glaring omission.
Right. If you are building a perfect terrarium, the moon seems like a pretty critical piece of the puzzle to leave out until the very end. That feels like a massive oversight for divine engineers.
Well, it seems counterintuitive. But the text frames this not as an oversight, but as an adaptive engineering solution to a new problem.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the Celestials didn't initially need a moon because they were present on Earth, actively managing the environment themselves. But they realized that if they ever completed their mission and returned to their cosmic origins, the animals they created would perish.
Because there's no one there to run the system.
Exactly. The Earth, standing alone, wouldn't have the mechanical forces necessary to sustain dynamic weather. So the moon was engineered to generate the ebb and flow of tides, to drive atmospheric wind currents, and to facilitate the water cycle, clouds, rain, snow.
So it's basically a highly mechanized life support system installed to make the Earth fully autonomous.
That is exactly what it is.
So they decide they need to build an automated life support system in orbit. The mechanics of how they actually accomplish this read like a hard sci-fi epic.
Oh, absolutely.
They don't just conjure it into the sky. They build massive industrial smelters down here on the surface. Specifically, the text places these smelters near modern-day Cairo, Egypt, and in Atlantis.
Which is described as now resting at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
Right. And they use these massive facilities to smelt special, highly reflective metals.
And transporting those materials required specialized vehicles. The smelted metals were loaded into what the text describes as flying ships, what we would commonly identify today as UFOs.
UFOs as construction freighters. I love that.
Yeah, these ships ferried the materials up to a temporary space station. Over an extended period, they assembled a colossal hollow sphere with a textured, rough surface.
And it was super shiny at first, right?
Very. 1 billion years ago, this silver sphere was supposedly so highly polished and reflective that night on Earth was incredibly bright. The dimming of the moon that we observe today is attributed entirely to 1 billion years' worth of cosmic dust settling onto its metallic surface.
But it isn't just a reflective rock. It is a literal orbiting tool shed. Because it is hollow, the text claims the moon functions as a giant celestial warehouse.
A warehouse for UFOs.
Yes, it stores the tools and equipment used by the Celestials. There is even a physical door built into the moon's surface.
So you hear reports of UFO sightings. The text's logic dictates that these aren't aliens traveling from distant galaxies. They are remote-controlled tools being dispatched from the moon's warehouse to monitor the Earth.
That makes so much sense within this logic. And this localized monitoring system required surface infrastructure too, right?
It did. The Celestials needed a staging area when they interacted with the Earth's environment. To solve this, they constructed a massive underwater installation referred to as a palace beneath the Bermuda Triangle.
Wow.
Yeah, it operates as a temporary lodge and operational hub for visiting Celestials.
I just have to pause and look at how seamlessly the author patches these things together. Taking established cultural mysteries, the sinking of Atlantis, the aerodynamic anomalies of UFOs, the navigational hazards of the Bermuda Triangle, and assigning them deeply functional, practical roles within a grand terraforming narrative.
It's very clever meaning-making.
It really is. But that brings us to a major contradiction. If they built this perfectly engineered, harmonious terrarium, why does our fossil record and our daily reality feature deadly predators, venomous snakes, and hyper-aggressive dinosaurs?
Well, the transition from a peaceful terrarium to a hostile environment introduces the concept of a biological Cold War.
A biological Cold War. Okay, explain that.
So 250 million years ago, the ecosystem was supposedly pristine. The Sahara Desert, for example, was a lush, vibrant green paradise.
Hard to imagine now.
Very. And the Celestials stationed on Earth became deeply enamored with the physical world they had built. They became tethered to the physical pleasures of the environment, indulging in the beauty of it, to the point that they began neglecting their cosmic duties.
So they basically went native.
Yeah, they started forgetting their spiritual origins.
They got too enmeshed to the hardware they built. And that attachment is what triggers the conflict, right? Because this localized paradise provokes a rival theological faction.
Exactly. The text introduces Satan, who becomes intensely jealous of the greatest creator's successful project. Satan wants to assert his own dominance, so he deploys a faction referred to in the text as Buddhas.
Now, we need to clarify that. In this specific cosmology, these aren't enlightened teachers.
No, not at all. Here, they act as cosmic saboteurs sent to infiltrate and disrupt the Earth's ecosystem.
Right, and these saboteurs initiate a massive biological weapons program. The pests we deal with today, flies, mosquitoes, rats, scorpions, centipedes, venomous snakes.
None of those are the result of natural selection in this text.
Exactly. They were specifically engineered by Satan's faction to degrade, consume, and wage war against the flora and fauna created by the Celestials.
And the escalation of that biological warfare brings us to the dinosaurs.
The heavy artillery.
Exactly. They weren't just giant lizards roaming the Earth. Satan's forces actually took on the physical, biological form of dinosaurs to systematically destroy the vegetation and terrorize the Celestials' creations out of pure spite.
Which requires the text to address the fossil record. We know the dinosaurs existed, and we know they went extinct.
Right, and the text frames this extinction event around 130 million years ago, not as an asteroid impact, but as a targeted divine intervention.
A plague, right.
Yes. The greatest creator, observing the devastation wrought by these biological weapons, engineered a highly specific plague to eradicate the dinosaurs. But eliminating their physical bodies wasn't enough, given their spiritual origin.
Because they were Satan's forces in disguise.
Exactly. So the text introduces a mechanism called the cathode black hole.
Okay, I want to understand the physics of that term in this universe. A cathode black hole sounds incredibly ominous.
It does. In electrical terms, a cathode is the negative pole, often associated with drawing in or absorbing electrons. Here, the author uses it metaphorically to describe a negative cosmic energy sink, a specialized metaphysical prison.
A prison for dinosaur souls.
Precisely. The greatest creator didn't just kill the dinosaurs, he forcefully extracted their souls and trapped them within this cathode black hole to ensure Satan's forces could not reincarnate or return to the celestial realms.
So they cleansed the Earth of these massive biological weapons. But the plague wasn't 100% effective, was it?
No, it wasn't. The text specifically notes that a pair of highly intelligent dinosaurs managed to evade the plague.
Just two of them.
Just two. They retreated to the deep ocean floor of the East China Sea and entered a state of dormancy, hiding from the greatest creator for over 100 million years.
And we are definitely going to circle back to those two because they dramatically alter the human timeline later on.
Oh, absolutely. But returning to the primary timeline, the Earth is now cleansed but severely depopulated. About 1.6 million years ago, the greatest creator drafted a blueprint for an entirely new, highly complex biological entity.
The prototype for modern humans.
Yes, and Jesus and the Celestials were once again put in charge of the manufacturing process.
But, you can't just manifest a complex biological entity out of thin air. You need infrastructure. You need a sterile, highly controlled laboratory environment.
Right.
So the Celestials built these massive genetic manufacturing facilities in the Sahara, which, remember, is still a lush green paradise at this point in the timeline. And those laboratories are the Egyptian pyramids.
The architectural shape of the pyramids is crucial here. They were not designed as tombs for pharaohs. The specific geometric structure was engineered to capture and funnel cosmic energy directly from the greatest creator into the biological synthesis process occurring within.
That's a wild repurposing of an ancient monument.
And the text emphasizes that this was not an instantaneous success either. It was a rigorous process of trial and error. The early attempts, hampered by the Celestials' lack of experience with this specific blueprint, resulted in the creation of monkeys.
Monkeys were just failed drafts.
Yeah. Subsequent recalibrations produced apes. Neither outcome satisfied the blueprint's requirements.
So they just keep iterating the design. And finally, the synthesis stabilizes, and they successfully manufacture the first true human beings. But it is not a global population rollout, is it?
Not at all. The pyramid laboratories specifically produced Black Africans, Native Americans, and the white populations of Europe, Egypt, and North Africa.
Okay.
Once these specific demographics were stabilized and introduced into the environment, the Celestials concluded their earthly mission and prepared to evacuate.
However, they faced a critical security dilemma. They were fully aware of Satan's previous sabotage with the dinosaurs. If they simply abandoned the pyramid laboratories intact, Satan's faction could easily uncover the blueprints.
Right. They could manipulate the genetic synthesis technology or hijack the cosmic energy funnels.
So to prevent this, the Celestials executed a deliberate scorched earth protocol. They systematically annihilated the lush ecosystems surrounding the pyramids, permanently destroying the environmental evidence of their presence.
So the desertification of the Sahara isn't a long-term climate shift. It is the active destruction of a crime scene.
It's just fascinating how the text provides an underlying mechanical causality for literally everything. But if you look at the populations the pyramids produce, there is a massive demographic hole.
A huge one.
Yeah, if they only created those three specific groups, Black Africans, Native Americans, and white populations, where did the populations of the Middle East or Asia come from?
Well, that gap introduces what is arguably the most radical premise of this cosmology, the concept of a fractured, multi-origin humanity.
Altair.
Yeah. We generally operate under the assumption that all human beings, despite surface-level variations, share a single, unified point of biological and spiritual origin. This text asserts the exact opposite. It argues that humanity is the product of multiple, competing developers utilizing entirely different source code.
Okay, if we use a computing analogy, we generally assume we are all running on the same underlying operating system. Right. We might have different interfaces, but the core biological and spiritual hardware is identical.
Right.
In Scheffing's universe, that is fundamentally false. We are literally different machines built in different factories by rival engineers.
Exactly. Consider the populations in the Middle East. The text argues they were completely absent from the pyramid synthesis process. Instead, roughly 7,000 years ago, a localized rival god discovered the Celestials' successful human prototypes.
And he gets jealous.
Completely. Driven by competition, this rival deity constructed a clandestine, localized laboratory in Jerusalem known as the Garden of Eden.
Wow.
Within this facility, he manufactured his own proprietary human models, Adam and Eve.
And mirroring the Celestials' scorched earth protocol in the Sahara, this rival god realizes his facility is a vulnerability too. The moment Adam and Eve are viable, he intentionally destroys the Garden of Eden to conceal his unauthorized manufacturing from the greatest creator and the Celestials.
He burns the evidence.
Yes, it takes the biblical narrative and recontextualizes it as corporate espionage.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it also provides a remarkably airtight internal logic to one of the most debated plot holes in the book of Genesis.
Oh, Cain and Abel.
Yes. After Cain murders Abel, the biblical text states Cain was terrified, saying, "Whoever finds me will kill me." The traditional theological dilemma is, if Adam, Eve, and Cain are the only humans in existence, who exactly is he afraid of?
Right.
This cosmology resolves that instantly. Cain wasn't afraid of non-existent siblings. He was terrified of the millions of celestial engineered humans who had already been populating the Earth for over 1,000,000 years.
He was afraid of the rival hardware. The psychological implications of that are wild. The text then projects that ancient multi-vendor origin directly into modern geopolitics. It reframes the profoundly complex multi-generational conflicts between Israelis and Palestinians, not as modern territorial disputes, but as a literal genetic family feud rooted in the unauthorized actions of this rival god.
It's a very deterministic view of history.
It is. But the multi-origin theory doesn't stop in the Middle East. We have to circle back to those two highly intelligent dinosaurs that dodged the cathode black hole.
The ones hiding in the East China Sea.
Yes, what happened to them?
Well, the text claims that roughly 7,500 years ago, these two dormant dinosaurs detected the presence of newly manufactured humans on the surface. Realizing they could blend in, they emerged from the sea, utilized an innate ability to shape-shift into human form, and began propagating heavily along the Yellow River Basin.
Shape-shifting dinosaurs.
Yes. Consequently, the text asserts that East and Southeast Asian populations have absolutely no divine celestial creator. Their biological origin point traces directly back to those two shape-shifting survivors.
Which provides a hyper-literal explanation for why Chinese culture strongly identifies as descendants of the dragon. The text weaponizes a cultural metaphor, turning it into a literal genetic lineage.
It does. But this divergence in origin isn't just about physical biology. It fundamentally alters the spiritual hardware of these populations.
This is where the text functions as an unconventional piece of comparative religion, right?
Yes. It details an event where a migration of these dinosaur descendants crossed the Pamir Mountains and entered India. Their objective was to intermingle with the Adam and Eve lineage, hoping that blurring the genetic lines would protect them from further punitive action by the greatest creator.
A genetic camouflage strategy.
Exactly. However, upon arriving, they discovered a severe compatibility issue.
The operating systems couldn't communicate. The software of one population just couldn't run on the hardware of the other.
Precisely. The spiritual architectures were fundamentally incompatible. The text positions the ancestors of Sakyamuni, the historical Buddha, as members of this migrating dinosaur-descended lineage.
Oh, wow.
When Sakyamuni achieved enlightenment, the text argues it was not a realization of universal truth, but rather an unlocking of deeply embedded genetic memory. He was subconsciously tapping into the Elysium world, the specific cosmic realm inhabited by the dinosaurs before they were deployed to Earth by Satan.
So his enlightenment was basically accessing his species' original cosmic hard drive. And this explains the historical trajectory of his teachings. It explains why Buddhism, despite originating geographically in India, struggled to dominate there, yet exploded in popularity when it moved eastward into Asia.
The mechanism is entirely biological in this text. The populations in East and Southeast Asia, sharing that same genetic origin, possessed the necessary hardware to process Sakyamuni's teachings.
So they were wired for it.
Exactly. Hearing those concepts triggered a subconscious resonance of soul because it echoed their own latent genetic memory of the Elysium world. The indigenous Indian populations, having been manufactured by entirely different creators with different cosmic materials, simply lack the biological receivers necessary to resonate with that specific spiritual frequency.
If you are listening to this and thinking, wait, software compatibility issues determining the spread of global religions, it is a stunningly mechanical view of theology.
It really is.
But if you have all these entirely different human operating systems running simultaneously, the pyramid humans, the Eden humans, the dinosaur descendants, how does this universe maintain any semblance of operational stability?
Well, the short answer is it doesn't. Stability in this cosmology is not a default state. It requires violent, systemic interventions. The Earth operates much like an unstable machine that regularly requires catastrophic system resets.
Which brings us to the massive extinction event 16 million years ago. The text introduces a previous iteration of humanity that was physically gigantic, vastly intelligent, but possessed a fundamentally corrupted moral code.
Right, and these giants dominated global hubs located in Maya, ancient Egypt, and Atlantis.
Their intelligence allowed them to develop technologies that rivaled the gods, but their moral decay led to endless cruelty toward the ecosystem and, an insatiable greed.
And the critical breaking point occurred when they developed the capacity to breach the celestial realms, specifically the 10,000-year world and the Elysium world. They were no longer just destroying the Earth, they were exporting chaos into the wider cosmic order.
They became a virus threatening the entire network. So the greatest creator initiated a hard reset.
A very hard reset.
In a single synchronized event, he triggered the absolute destruction of the giant civilizations in Maya, Egypt, and Atlantis. He deliberately purged the apex predators of humanity, leaving only the physically weaker, less aggressive human prototypes to inherit the surface and rebuild.
And to mitigate the chances of another moral collapse, the greatest creator implemented a cosmic incentive structure. He engineered a specific, localized reward planet, referred to as the 1,000-year world, situated exactly 960 light years away.
A literal heaven planet.
Yes, it functioned as an explicit behavioral contract. If the surviving humans managed the Earth ethically, their consciousness would be transferred to this paradise upon physical death.
But, of course, the system destabilizes again. We fast forward to about 4,700 years ago. The human population has recovered, civilizations have advanced, and they fall right back into a hyper-materialistic cycle.
The physical accumulation of wealth completely eclipses the spiritual directives they were given. They begin ignoring the celestial management structure entirely.
And the crisis was compounded by a failure in middle management?
It was. The greatest creator had delegated the direct oversight of Earth to two specific deities. As the human population's behavior deteriorated, these two managing gods engaged in a catastrophic ideological conflict regarding how to discipline them. The management structure completely paralyzed itself.
So the greatest creator just bypasses middle management and reaches for the ultimate failsafe. He doesn't send a plague this time. The text describes a purely mechanical intervention. The greatest creator physically shifts the Earth's dip angle.
He tilts the planet.
Yeah. By rapidly altering the planetary axis, he weaponizes the inertia of the oceans. The water sloshes over the continents, unleashing a 40-day globally synchronized flood.
And this is the mechanism behind the Great Flood of Noah. However, the text is meticulous in dismantling the idea that Noah was an isolated survivor. Because the mechanism was a sudden planetary tilt, the devastation and the localized survival efforts were inherently global.
And the text leverages global folklore to validate its mechanical explanation. It points to Dayu the Great in ancient Chinese mythology, who is credited with controlling massive floodwaters.
Right.
It points to the Mandan tribe, an indigenous nation in North Dakota, whose oral histories contain highly detailed accounts of surviving a catastrophic flood. The author uses these diverse, geographically isolated narratives as interlocking proof of a single planetary axis shift.
By aligning Noah, Dayu, and the Mandan tribe, the text is making a sophisticated structural argument. It isn't just recounting a myth. It is pointing to the shared trauma embedded in global folklore and arguing that these are the fragmented, localized memories of the exact same mechanical system reset.
It is a masterclass in connecting the dots, no matter how far apart those dots initially appear. Which brings us to the ultimate question for you listening. Why should you care about this deeply eccentric, highly specific text?
That's the real question.
Because it operates as a perfect, magnified mirror of the human brain's desperate hunger for meaning. We have an innate need for a grand unified theory. We desperately want to know that the pyramids, the mosquito buzzing in our ear, the lunar cycle, and ancient religious texts are all part of a cohesive, decipherable mechanism.
We really do crave order.
So deeply that we will eagerly trace the lines connecting shape-shifting dinosaurs to UFO warehouses if it means the universe makes sense.
It highlights the lengths to which the human mind will go to impose structure on chaos.
Yeah.
And it leaves us with a highly provocative lens through which to view our own reality. In this text, massive, undeniable geological features like the Sahara Desert were created purely to obscure the tracks of cosmic engineers. If we follow that logic forward, it compels us to ask, what mundane, accepted realities of our modern landscape might a future civilization completely misinterpret? What normal infrastructure or geographical anomalies might they look back on and confidently assume are the remnants of a deliberate cosmic cover-up?
That fundamentally shifts how we view the physical world around us. What will our accepted reality look like when someone else decides to take all the pieces, dump them on the floor, and build a completely different puzzle? Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning the anomalies, and we will catch you next time.